Hello and welcome everybody, Lionheart here with the Nomadic Tribes Culture Pack DLC introduction and overview. Similar to my Seleucid faction overview and introduction, I'll have a look at each of the three new factions, their starting locations, some of their units, looking at their diplomatic situation and technologies, and then we'll see how they fare on the battlefield. The Nomadic Tribes Culture Pack is free for everyone to download between October 22nd to the 29th. After that, you can buy it for its regular price, which can be found on the Steam store page for the DLC. Link to that is in the description. So what factions do you actually get in the Nomadic Tribes Culture Pack DLC? There are three tribes to choose from: the Masa, Royal Sketchier, and the Roxolani. All of them are in the northeast of the campaign map, offering a completely different starting location from those of other factions so far encountered in Rome 2. Each tribe, while being masters of the horse, all have their own little specialities as well, which can be seen on the faction panel on the campaign selection screen. The Roxolani, for example, migrant traders and conquerors. Royal Sketchier, craftsmanship and archery masters. The Masa, pastoral lifestyle and fierce independence. With these bonuses and traits, you can carve out a different campaign with each one. Something to take note of is the Nomadic Tribes trait that they all share: Marauders and Horde. Marauders gives a plus 10% income from raiding and sacking, and Horde gives plus 2 army recruitment capacity in your home province, which means you can easily raise a vast and large army from the start. Now it's time to have a look at each of these factions, their starting locations, and their diplomatic situations when you start a campaign with them. We'll start off with the Masa.
A test of strength and power awaits. Your people are great warriors, as your northern neighbors will quickly realize when you raid their lands and claim their horses. The kingdom of the Chorasmii lies to the east. Their riches are yours for the taking. Move southwards, and you can wage glorious war against the successors to the mighty Persian Empire, the sons of your old enemy Cyrus. This will not be easy, but the rewards will be great. All will tremble before the Masa.
As the advisor has said, this is a test of strength and power for the Masa. You have potential enemies both north and south, and potential kingdoms to raid in the east. This is very much a faction set for raiding and sacking, as well as conquest. The starting location of the Masa leaves you without a port. That means you're free to focus on land conquest without having to worry about the trifles of naval combat just yet. Eventually though, you'll want to look for a port and set out towards the open sea. But for now, your starting armies looks like they're getting ready to raid. As we can see on the tactical map, we are in the far east of the campaign. Potential enemies all around, as well as allies. But it sets up for an interesting starting location from which you can descend in pretty much any direction. Your potential targets both north, south, and slightly to the east. And once you conquer Sketchier, you'll be able to move further west. These are all great options at the beginning of your campaign, especially with that Horde recruitment bonus. On the diplomatic side of things, the Masa aren't exactly liked by everyone when you first start off. There is potential for plenty of enemies in the nearby regions. However, this can be overcome in a number of ways, either through straight up conquest, sacking and raiding their cities, or through using the same blood trait which a lot of these factions share. You can form a confederation and move on to global domination. Having a look through the unit roster of the Masa on the encyclopedia, we can see that they stay true to their horse master origins. A lot of their units are elite cavalry units. However, there are some infantry in there if you do need to support your cavalry, both as spears and archers. But it will ultimately be the strength of your cavalry that will decide the fate of your battles. You'll have to be careful when coming up against some of the other factions in the game, especially the Greek states that focus on pike formations and spearmen. But with your noble armoured lancers and cataphracts, you should be able to break those lines and flank them. Having looked at the Masagatai, let's move on and take a look at the next tribe, the Roxolani.
The time has come to make a stand. It was the likes of the Tesagetai to the southeast that drove your people westward in search of new pastures. They deserve little mercy. The Iorsoi are nearby, and as fellow Sarmatians, they would make valuable allies against your common foes. Better still, form a confederation with them, and you will assure your survival against other nomadic peoples, and make easy the subjugation of the weak and rich who live beyond the great steppes.
As the advisor has said, it is time to make a stand as the Roxolani. Whether you decide to form a confederation or make that stand on your own is up to you, but there are plenty of options to make. Having a look at the Roxolani starting location over in the Far East, they are surrounded by potential allies and enemies. Only a single faction separates them from the Masagatai, and it could be very early on in your campaign where those two factions come to clash. But thankfully, you have a way out to the west for possible expansion and allies and more confederation. On the diplomatic side of things, the Roxolani aren't doing as badly as the Masagatai when you first start a campaign, but they're not exactly loved either. They still have plenty of options for confederation through the same blood trait, which could be used to your advantage. The technology of the nomadic tribes is pretty much the same across all the factions. It focuses on improving what they're best at, their cavalry, both their lancers and their horse archers. A wise general would research these first. Finally, having a look at their units in the encyclopedia, you can see that like the Masagatai and the Scythians, the focus is on their horsemen. While they do have some access to infantry, their best troops are their Sarmatian horsemen, royal lancers, and armoured lancers as you go down the various tech trees. Use of your cavalry will be key to your victories through flanking and charges, and using those skirmisher horse units to destroy your enemies from afar. Combination of all these units will make for a highly effective mobile strike force. Having looked at the Roxolani, we'll now look at the final faction, Royal Scythia.
As king of all the Scythians, your claim upon the lands of the Katiaroi to the west is just. Do with them as you see fit. Right to the southeast and you will find Sarmatians. Be wary, for they are your equals in archery and horsemanship, but will not think twice when you have seized lands and herds from under their very noses. Although horses cannot ride across water, a port will enable trade and conquest with kingdoms beyond the Black Sea. Bosporus to the south is a gateway to the farthest reaches of the Mediterranean. The Scythians could yet be masters of all.
King of all the Scythians, as our loyal advisor has mentioned, gives us claim to the lands to the west and to the east under our right of kingship. Enemies aplenty. Starting position of the Scythians opens itself to expansion both on land and by sea. It's one of the only nomadic tribes to have near direct access to a port at the start of a campaign. A brief conquest in the south will lead to potential control of the Mediterranean. The Scythians have a great starting location, not only because they can expand both to the west and east via land, but also the potential expansion that the nearby port offers. With this port you can one day sail out to the Mediterranean, conquer Rome, Carthage and Gaul if you so choose. But such adventurous expansion must be checked. You'll have to be careful which side you expand to first, rather than leave yourself exposed from all fronts. Of all the nomadic factions, the Scythians have the best relations when they first start off a campaign. Sure, not everybody likes them, but there's not too many that hate them either. Only a few kingdoms such as the Odrysians, and they're not an immediate threat. As with the other nomadic tribes, you have the potential to form a confederation through the same blood trait. Whether you use this or not, as Sketchier, probably more reliant for the other factions, the Roxolani and perhaps the Masa, but Sketchier, with its own king, will want to claim its own dominance. It may well claim and build a confederation, but only so that it can subjugate those that it would otherwise seek to destroy entirely. But the choice is yours, and the Royal Sketchier gives you plenty of options to do this with your campaign. Sketchier, similarly to the Roxolani and the Masa, focus on their strength of their cavalry forces, while infantry and archers do remain. It's all about the cavalry. How you use your cavalry to dominate the enemy will be up to you, but you have the Royal Horse Archers, Scythian Royal Horse, Royal Skirmishers, and Armoured Lancers to help you achieve this in your campaign. Once again, it will be the mighty and noble cavalry that will win your victories through flanking and charging. Your first action with the Royal Scythians will need to be decisive. And it's recommended that you take out this port and capture it for your own uses as soon as possible. By raising a force at your capital, you should be able to achieve this with your mighty horse archers and young axes. Time now to see these masters of the horse, the nomadic tribes, in action on the battlefield. The Masa Lancers are some of the best in the game and will ride down all enemies before them. The Sarmatian riders of the Roxolani are great light cavalry with solid charge bonuses, able to run down your enemies. They may not be the most heavily armoured, but they'll get the job done. The Sarmatian Lancers of the Roxolani strike fear into the hearts of their enemies, not only through their lances, but through the goat-like horns attached to their mighty noble steeds. Scythian Skirmishers, heavily armoured and ready for battle. Strength of Sketchier lies in her missile troops, and her cavalry do just that. Good goat horsey. Destroy your enemies with your mighty cavalry charges. The nomadic tribes are out now. Choose your tribe wisely.